My name's Marty Foord. I'm the principal at ETCAsia. What are they? Well, firstly, ETCAsia is committed to using the Bible in an expository way. Whether in preaching, small groups or one-to-one Bible reading, we train people to use Scripture expositorily. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means this. It means that what is important to the text of Scripture that we're looking at should be important to the sermon that we preach or the Bible study that we run. And what is of little importance to the text that we're looking at will be of little importance to the sermon or the Bible study. Expository use of Scripture means that the shape of the biblical text that we're looking at determines the shape of the sermon or the Bible study. Now, the wonderful benefit of using the Bible expositorially is that we get God's emphasis, not my emphasis. See, I'm a biased person, and using Scripture in an expository way challenges my own biases and helps me to see God's priorities. What's the second ingredient? Well, the second ingredient is that ETCAsia is committed to biblical theology. Now, by biblical theology, we mean this. The Bible has one overarching story, and the centre of that story is Jesus. And rightly understanding biblical theology enables us to interpret the Bible properly, especially the Old Testament. Take, for example, the story of David and Goliath. Is it about how I should slay the Goliaths in my life? No. That puts me at the centre of the story. The focus of the David and Goliath story is David. He is God's anointed king. And this weak-looking king conquers the enemy of God's people, Goliath. Now, if we're familiar with the one great story of Scripture, we'll see that the David and Goliath story points ahead to Jesus. How? Well, Jesus is God's one true anointed king. On the cross, he looked totally weak. But by his death, he conquered the greatest enemies of God's people: sin, death, and the devil. So, biblical theology helps me to interpret the Bible properly. That's the second ingredient. What's the third ingredient? It's that ETCAsia is reformed. Now, reformed is a word that has many meanings to many people. We mean the classic historic use of the word reformed. That is, a reformed Christian is anyone who can affirm the great reformed confessions of the 16th and 17th century. Now, of course, one of the great characteristics of the Reformed tradition is a robust belief that God is in complete control of his world. I mean, if God's not in control of his world, it means that some way the world can control God. And if God is not in full control of this world, then that means the future is uncertain. It may mean that evil in the end wins. And if God is not in complete control of his world, then he might not be able to answer my prayers. But the Reformed tradition affirms that God is all-powerful and is in complete control of his world. So, that means I can pray confidently knowing that God can do anything. It also means that history has a certain outcome. Christ will build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail. See, the sovereignty of God is actually a very practical teaching that gives me great security and comfort in the present. That's the third ingredient. What's the fourth ingredient? Well, ETCAsia is focused on mission. Now, by mission, we mean the historical and biblical use of the word. Mission originally meant sending. And Scripture teaches that God sends gospel preachers to gospel poor people. Remember Jesus' words? The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest field. And think of Paul's great mission words in Romans 10:15. And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? And then what does it say? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who literally preach the gospel. So, mission in Scripture is about God sending gospel preachers to gospel poor people. And since Jesus' death and resurrection, the harvest field has become the whole world. So mission is actually focused on sending gospel preachers into the whole world. So that's what makes ETCAsia distinctive.